Pilsy, exit interviews. We are going to do Mathieu Joseph's exit interview. It was almost a tale of two seasons for Mathieu Joseph, who played 72 games this year, was able to stay healthy after only playing 56 last year. Last year was a complete disappointment. Only 3 goals. He matched that like a week into the season. Pilsy, how would you describe Mathieu Joseph's season?
Disorientated a little bit, Ross, right? Like, it was very unfortunate with Tarasenko being brought in. I thought that put Mathieu Joseph on a perfect spot to be a third line winger. And then when Tarasenko was traded, Mathieu Joseph had to be up elevated in the lineup, and that didn't really work. Then he got brought back down and then back up again. And it was unfortunate because I feel like it put a dark cloud over what was actually a really great season for Mathieu Joseph. I mean, in 72 games, he gets 11 goals, 24 assists, a massive improvement from last season when we all kind of wrote him off and were like, okay, he's going to be the salary cap dump to get Shane Pinto signed, put him as a sweetener in a trade, just get rid of him, get him out of here. But now you see that he adds some value to this team. If the Ottawa Senators, and I hope they do, find a top 6 winger, then he's going to be put back on that third line. He's going to be killing penalties. And the big thing with Mathieu Joseph that cannot be understated is his speed. When the Ottawa Senators lost a bunch of players throughout, the one characteristic I felt this team was lacking the whole time was speed. They've got it with Mathieu Joseph, and his speed is what makes him an excellent penalty killer. And he spent a lot of time killing penalties. He's 5th on the team in total amount of ice while shorthanded, 127 minutes. And I just really think to have an offensive threat like him on the penalty kill does so much for your team. And I'm no longer thinking about moving Mathieu Joseph to clear up some salary cap space. I think his contract is in the right spot, and this is a guy that they need to keep to help their bottom 6 out.
I think they'd like to keep him, but if the right move came along for $3 million off the books, I wouldn't be opposed. Like, he's not an untouchable for me. I understand that he has value, but for me, like, the second half of the season was really disappointing, and he was in a spot to succeed. He had a great start to the season. Don't get me wrong, but it really fell off a cliff after New Year's. In his final, 30 games, he had 3 goals, and 2 of them came in one game against the Tampa Bay Lightning. Against the Tampa Bay Lightning. Like, he was public skating the last 12 games of the season. 0 points, -7. Was not a contributing member, even though he was on Tim Stützle's wing. It really has to be balanced, though, because he was so hot at the start of the season, and he was able to be I think he was like a top performer on the team over the course of the first number of months. But the last 27 games having 1 goal, that was flashbacks trauma for me of last season of a guy who just could not finish. And really, considering how much opportunity he got, kind of underwhelmed me. So I get that it was wow, what a bounce back performance from Joseph. But the end of the season kind of soured me on it a little bit. I know he has his role, but to me, he cannot be in the top 6. That's where I'll draw the line. He cannot be a top 6 player. He is a third line player, and that's the ceiling where I'd put him in the lineup.
But that's fine, Ross. He's paid as a third line winger, and that's
played in the top 6 all year.
But I think just because you get an opportunity to play in the top 6 doesn't mean you're meant to be there or that you can succeed there, right? Like, you would think that's the case, but I don't think every player works out like that. And I think it's a little unfair to look at everyone's March and April individually, because other than Brady Tkachuk, I think every single player on this team sucked in March and April. Like, the team collectively was bad during that stretch. So yeah, it's an interesting case for Mathieu Joseph, but Ross, I really see his value, because if you did get rid of him, then this team has such limited speed, and I think that's going to hurt them in the long run. So I like Mathieu Joseph on this team, but I think the one thing we can agree on is you got to find a way to keep him on that third line.
Exactly, because look, even I don't know what's holding him back in a top 6 role, because he does forecheck well, and he does kind of.
But some players just can't make that jump, Ross, and that's fine. Like, being a third line NHL player is pretty damn good. Not everyone's able to make that jump to the next step, and yeah, I think that's okay. Like, if he was getting paid $5.5 million, okay, we got to figure this out. You got to find a way to be a top 6 player. But he's making under 3 million. That's perfect third line money for me.
Okay, so then the Senators need to address around him then and add top 6 depth so that they can even a guy who's on the third line that can jump up, because it's going to happen with injury during the season. But I just didn't like how he stayed up there without any kind of confrontation. Like that line with Joseph, Stützle, and Giroux played more together, almost double than any other line on the Ottawa Senators this season. So it almost just felt that I know Jacques didn't have the options. Like, what was he going to do? Put Boris up on the top 6? Like there really wasn't that. They tried even at one point. They had Joseph and Parker Kelly in the top 6 for a couple of games. Like, they really need to address the depth on this team up front. The top end talent is there. Injuries are going to happen. You can't predict both of your top 6 centermen out of the lineup, but like, this is on the wing. Like, this shouldn't be the case. So Joseph, to me, cannot be in the top 6, even as a third piece, complementary piece on a line. The best he played all year was when he was on the third line with Ridley Gregg and Vladimir Tarasenko. That line was awesome. So maybe let's think about what made that line successful. Obviously, you have Ridley hounding pucks, being a solid two-way guy. For me, it's him kind of contrasting with a guy who's slower but can make plays. So you know who would be the perfect guy, I think, to play on a line? And again, would you have him on a third line? I don't know, but stylistically, a Tyler Toffoli, where it's like he knows where to be to get in the right spots, just like Tarasenko. And I think Joseph needs that, and he needs to play with guys who have very high hockey sense to even have a chance to be in a position to produce offense. But look, all in all, the numbers are decent. I would have liked to have seen him, especially based on his start, crack 40 points. Couldn't do that, finishes with 35, but there is a lot to like on a bounce back season from Mathieu Joseph. What would you like to see better from him next year to really kind of make it not worth his contract? He's got 2 more years left at 2.95, but what would be a successful upcoming season to you for Joseph?
Yeah, I think the 40-point mark is a fair spot, Ross. I think, like, I want him to be maybe not necessarily the driver on a third line, but not the third guy on the third line, right? Like, he needs to be a guy that's using his speed to set up a goal scorer, like you mentioned, a Toffoli, a Tarasenko, something like that. So honestly, 40 points, try to hit 40 points and find some consistency throughout the entire season, I think would be where I would lean with Mathieu Joseph.
We do have to give a ton of credit to him. One, he's an all-time vibes guy, great locker room guy, and he also set a career high in points. His previous career high was in his rookie season when he had 26. So he got 9 more points than his previous career high. But
well, he had 30 in the year he was traded to Ottawa. 18 with Tampa, 12 with Ottawa.
I didn't add them together. Nice catch there.
Guy.
But still a career high though. Still a career high. Correct. By 5. Instead of 9. So Mathieu Joseph, let us know in the comments what you think about Joseph's season, because for me, he's a very interesting case study of how when things were going good, it was going great for him, and when things were going bad, it was going awful for him. So where's the balance with Mathieu Joseph? Let us know in the comments. Would love to get people's opinions on the season that was and what your expectations are going forward for Mathieu Joseph.